Hello. In this demo, we'll show you how to scale up your ESX environment using the FlashArray as a Service offering with Equinix Metal. So in this case, we have an existing VMware cluster, and we've provisioned a new bare metal ESX server in the Equinix Metal offering. The networking pre-configuration has been completed, as shown in an earlier video. And so the next step is to add the iSCSI VLANs to the bond of this particular server. You want to add both VLANs, so that way this server has redundant connections not only to the controllers, but within each controller as well. Once those VLANs have been added to the bond, we can go and add that server to your compute cluster. So give it your fully qualified domain name, and then add credentials to be able to add this host to the particular cluster. Once you've added it, we want to configure it in the virtual distributed switch. Generally, in the Equinix environment, you're going to be using a bonded mode for networking, either a hybrid bond, meaning it has internal VLANs and public IP addresses, or layer 2, meaning it's only internal VLANs, as the case here. With these bonds, because the physical NICs are bonded together, you'll use lags and LACP within a virtual distributed switch. So what we're doing here is adding the physical ports on this server to that lag within this virtual distributed switch that has been pre-created. This will allow for redundant network connectivity for your VM kernel ports, and of course also your virtual machine networks on this particular host, leveraging the lag within the virtual distributed switch and the LACP bond on the networking side of the Equinix Metal. Once it's been configured in the virtual distributed switch, we want to add iSCSI VM kernel ports for each one of the iSCSI VLANs, 1016 and 1017. So we'll add the VERSE VM kernel adapter, which is bound to that pre-configured iSCSI virtual distributed port group, and give it an IP address that's in use within that VLAN, and the same IP subnet that's in use on your iSCSI target for that particular VLAN. Repeat that process for the other VLAN as well. So earlier it was 1016, and this one will be 1017, the other VLAN that is spread across the iSCSI network on the FlashArray controllers. Choose no services. The MTU will be retrieved from the switch, which is generally going to be using jumbo frames, so 9000 MTU. Of course, you can manually set it as well. And then configure the IP address that is relevant for the iSCSI network on that particular VLAN. Complete that process. Next, we can take a look at our cluster. Now, by clicking on the cluster, you can see some information about the pure storage configuration of this host group. That third host has not been configured on the array. We want to add its IQNs and configure its iSCSI target information on that host, which can be done with the vSphere plugin. This will configure the iSCSI targets and best practices on that host, and then also add it to the host group on the FlashArray. Now we can go ahead and provision and manage storage on this host. So by going to the iSCSI adapter, we can remove the old network port binding that gets created during initial deployment of the host and rescan the adapter. There's no need to add the VM kernel ports directly in there because it's discovered through the virtual distributed switch automatically. As you can see, the iSCSI targets were added by the vSphere plugin, and it can see the storage that has already been presented to that particular cluster. vVol data stores do not get automatically mounted by SCSI Discovery, so we want to make sure that the vVol data store is also mounted to this particular host. Go to the vVol data store, mount it to additional hosts, and choose the new host in this cluster to mount the vVol data store. So vVol-based virtual machines can be provisioned and managed on this server as well within this cluster. You can see the vVol data store is now mounted to the full cluster of all three hosts. This has been a demonstration of adding a host and scaling up a cluster in an Equinix Metal environment. Thanks for watching.